All right, today we're going to talk about energy resources. So with energy resources, we have our two main types, renewable and non-renewable. Now renewable we tend to call our alternative resources, so AKA alternative. And that's because they're generally not the ones we use the most of. So most of the time we're going to use our non-renewable. So we're going to focus on non-renewable with part one of the video today. And with non-renewable, we're mostly talking about fossil fuels. So again, we use them faster than they can be replaced. Now all fossil fuels are made by Earth, they are made naturally. But the problem is it takes millions of years to make them, and we're consuming them at really, really high rates. Now particularly, we have oil, which is probably the most consumed worldwide. We have natural gas, which is probably the cheapest because we have quite a bit of it in the United States. And then we have coal. Now coal is important because we actually have this one in Virginia. So if you think about coal, this is actually one of Virginia's main outputting products. Virginia has coal in the Appalachian Plateau. So I'm going to go ahead and make a note of that because that's important. That's one of the reasons that we use a lot of coal in Virginia. It's one of our main resources, and if we have it, it's cheaper for us to use it in this state. So coal we output. What are the negatives? So one, they're non-renewable, so that we will run out if we currently use them at the same rate we are now. We've gotten better at taking oil out of the ground, but oil definitely has negative impacts. We use it because it's easy to use, it's easy to put into a car, and it burns pretty quickly. But the negatives would be that it puts off a lot of pollution. So if I'm looking at my non-renewable, so what are the negatives? Well, we've got, with non-renewable, a lot of air pollution with all of our fossil fuels. So air pollution is a huge negative. We're running out pretty quickly. We do get better at extracting them from the ground, but we are running out. Mining can be a negative because it puts human lives at risk. So these are our negatives. Those are important things to keep in mind. So the negatives are pretty huge. So why would we use it if there's so many big negatives? Well, now we look at the positives. So what are the advantages to using fossil fuels? They're pretty cheap because we can mine them in the United States and in Virginia particularly. They're easy to use. You just burn them. So they use pretty quickly and they don't have a huge money cost. So that's one of the reasons we use them. Now, we're going to talk about in our next video why renewable may be a better option for our future. Because of all these drawbacks. Now, are there any other non-renewable energy resources? Now, we're focusing only on energy this time, so things that have to produce energy. Well, one would be uranium, which is used for nuclear power. So uranium's another one you could add to that box. Now, it's not a fossil fuel, which is why it's got a separate arrow here. Uranium's not a fossil fuel. And it doesn't put off air pollution. It actually has no CO2 pretty much as far as what it actually makes you produce into the atmosphere. So uranium would be a great one to use, except there's a large amount of nuclear waste and radioactive waste that goes along with using uranium. So definitely some serious drawbacks to these, but we're going to talk about them more in class, and then we'll talk about renewable in our next video.